Welcome to God's Vibes. I'm Juliana Page, and I teach the inner life behind lasting leadership. If you're ready to become a leader God can trust, you're in the right place. Every week, we'll strengthen your spiritual, mental, emotional, and leadership capacity so you can faithfully steward your calling, influence, and relationships. Let's get started.
What's good, Faith Walkers? Welcome back. We started a prophetic encouragement slash teaching in our previous episode. So if you are watching on Juliana Page TV or if you're listening to the God's Vibes podcast, make sure that you listen to the first one. But essentially, just a little brief recap here before we continue. This is a time of transition, and how you move in transition cannot be random. It actually really determines a lot of big things out ahead of you. So go back and listen to that. I also want to encourage you to join us live. I so love connecting live because this is when you can get mentoring and coaching in real time. This is where you can ask questions, and this is where we connect and really fellowship and do a lot of really great work together behind the scenes in a way that you cannot do in this kind of platform. So Courage Co is where we do that kind of work. You've got 2 opportunities every single month to join us live and to really benefit from the rich teaching and the depth that we go to during those times of prophetic encouragement and fellowship, and also revelatory teaching. So your next one is coming up on July 16th, and this is going to be on relationships. This is so timely and relative, and it's so important. It's very revelatory as well. So I encourage you to come, invite somebody. It is in Courage Co. I'll make sure to put all of the details about Courage Co. below if you are brand new, to make sure that you can join us in there for that, whether that is live or you're accessing the replay. There's also a little brief window where you can go back through and get our teaching from last month and really sit and absorb that as well. But this is going to be on relationship, how you can discern who to trust. So this is going to be discernment, this is going to be boundaries, and this is going to be biblical wisdom for relationships, which we absolutely need, because in times of transition, relationships are one of the first things that start shifting and changing, okay? And we have to know how to adapt well to that in real time, and that can be really, really, really difficult, okay? So I encourage you to join us for that. Then we will have our Kingdom Builders call on July 30th at 7 p.m., and that's our time of prophetic encouragement. So if you want more depth with prophetic encouragement and prophecy in general, and if you're really working to walk spiritually, walk really closely to the Lord, that's another great live experience. Just by being in Courage Co, you get access to these. So I will put the details to Courage Co in the show notes, okay? Also, if you do want some one-on-one intensive coaching and support in this season, I do have private intensives open on my calendar. I decided to open these up for the summer because in the summer is usually when people are transitioning, strangely enough. I kind of look at the summertime as a really important time. Many people look at this time as retreating and vacating, but this is actually a time of acceleration, not a time of coasting. So if you do want one-on-one support, you can apply for those private intensives. And if you do want to just go deeper in leadership in general, you can also make sure that you subscribe to the Spirit-Driven Success audio mentorship. So I update that weekly, and that's where I am teaching on leadership specifically. So that's one area that God is shifting in this season. All of those things are really great resources for you. My recommendation is Courage Co. Just get started in Courage Co. Okay, so let's dive back in. Whew. All right, we are on part 2 of God is transitioning you, okay? What I'm going to highlight right now are signs of transition, just in case you weren't clear, like we kind of identified before that maybe you're feeling things shifting, but you haven't been clear on what those are. Here are the signs. Number 1, the first sign is lifted grace. Like you at one time had this grace, this divine enablement, meaning it was enablement that was beyond you, supernatural strength that was beyond you, focus, stamina, endurance, to be in a place that maybe you wouldn't choose, to withstand warfare and attacks and elements that you never thought that you could get through. And you've really been able to endure things that totally surprise you now that you're on the other side of a lot of them. But now it seems that the grace is lifted, and where once you had grace for some things, now you feel like your humanity is going to take over and you're losing your cool and you're getting irritated, and things that once you had command over seem to start being things that are messing with you now, okay? So one question that I hear most often is this: how do I know if I'm in transition? Well, there isn't just one answer, and there's not one size fits all. This is why, biblically speaking, we always move in wisdom and discernment, because those help us discern gray areas in our life, which is a lot of things, that they're not always what meets the eye or black and white. This is why Jesus always spoke in parables, right? So there are some patterns that I've noticed over the years, both in my own life, but also through coaching leaders, right? One of the biggest indicators is that the grace begins to lift. And it's very obvious. And it almost seems like a suddenly, like overnight. Okay. And I want to be really careful here, because I'm not talking about burnout caused by overworking. Okay. I'm not talking about laziness or procrastination. I'm not talking about simply quitting because something became difficult. These are not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something much deeper. And there are seasons, okay, when the assignment you faithfully carried suddenly just feels different to you, right? The fruit that once came somewhat easily, right? Like you prayed, you obeyed, and there was fruit, right? Now that kind of fruit requires tremendous effort. And you're starting to see where you're not really able to trust God in the same way. Okay. The excitement seems to disappear. You find yourself striving instead of flowing. And often your first thought is, Lord, what is wrong with me? This used to be easy. This used to be where I really felt like you called me. This used to feel like I was anointed for this. Like, what is happening here? It's almost like, it feels like the manna is lifting in terms of like your strength. You no longer have the strength. You no longer have the focus. You no longer have the passion. You no longer have the fortitude. And it's not because you're not being disciplined. It's not because you're not being consistent. It's not because you're not interceding and maintaining a prayer life. It's not any of that. It's literally just that it's requiring all this effort, and it feels more human than supernatural. Okay. So the better question in that time versus like, what's wrong with me, is, Lord, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm noticing these things are shifting. What are you doing? Right? Like, help me embrace the shift, whatever the shift is. Help me to embrace what you were doing in the shift, because sometimes God allows grace for one season to complete an assignment, and then he allows it to lift to prepare you for another one or for the next one, right? So the grace isn't always removed because you failed. Okay, the grace shifts because the assignment's shifting, and we wouldn't know, because some of us are like so hardworking that we would like stay till the death, right? So sometimes like God caused the grace to lift to get us to move. Okay, so that's why we have to be careful not to judge ourselves so quickly, because we have to discern spiritual things. We can't just get heady or emotional about them. And many people get stuck in this very place because they really do try to spend years resurrecting a season that God completed. They're just not able to make peace with a season being over. And so they keep trying to resurrect it and bring life to something that God is done working on. Okay? So they keep trying to make yesterday's grace produce tomorrow's fruit, and it just is not going to happen. But grace is always connected to God's present invitation, not a past thing or a former thing. Okay? So what we have to remember, and how you can sort of perceive this grace lifting, is that Jesus never asked us to strive. That's one of the first clues that you can have that you're not walking according to the Spirit. Listen to what Jesus says in John 15:4. Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, no more can ye except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me, ye can do nothing. So notice what Jesus doesn't say here. He doesn't say push harder. He doesn't say force more fruit to happen. He doesn't say make it happen. He says abide. Abide. Now, if you're like me, The Lord, literally, when I was like brand new to cultivating a relationship with him, okay, I was not introduced to God in a way that I could really have relationship with him and encounters with him. That wasn't even on my radar. But as I really started reading my Bible, encountering the Holy Spirit, praying, I kept hearing that my strategy, my blueprint, if you will, my plan was to abide. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, that's not usually in my vocabulary. Like, I genuinely don't get it. I get that, like, you are the vine, we're the branches, but like, how do I abide in you? Like, I don't get it. Well, there's your homework. You're going to learn how to abide in me. And this was going to be my strategy for a year, right? So essentially what it means is like when you are connected to God, godliness is going to naturally flow out of you. When you are thinking with the mind of Christ, God's thoughts are going to flow out of you. When you are praying and letting God do a work in your heart, and when you are crucifying your flesh, when you're dying to yourself daily, you're going to see the fruit of the Spirit produced in your life, right? So when you're staying connected to God intimately in that way, you are going to behold him and you're going to become like who you're beholding, okay? So fruit is the natural outcome then of a relationship. So God's just saying, like, stay connected to me. Stay in relationship with me. Don't perform, don't hustle, don't fear, just relate with me. Stay connected to me and I'll keep you connected to everything that you need to be connected to, right? But whenever we begin striving, then we start getting disconnected, right? It's like you start drifting, okay? You're anchored, but then it's like the anchor comes up and you start drifting away, okay? You're no longer anchored. So what you can constantly ask yourself, and what I do now is, am I abiding or performing? So I have figured this out because I've worked with the Lord on this. When you practice abiding has a calm, it has a stillness, it has a restfulness, it has a very present moment clarity about it, right? When I am not abiding, then things feel like pressure. They feel like stress. They feel like urgency, usually, for me. Okay, so I can pay attention to that to know what I'm going to be moved by and what I'm not. I'm not going to move from pressure, from stress, or from those things. I'm just going to use those as opportunities to slow down and reconnect, right? It's almost like when you're in a relationship with somebody and you see their emotions rising, you're not going to like drive a confrontation or a conversation there. You're going to let the emotions subside. Then you're going to revisit it. You're not going to just try to push more in that moment because neither of you are capable of doing that, right? It's just an opportunity to reconnect when you are able to and you have capacity to. So striving is often a sign that we are relying on ourselves instead of remaining connected to God, okay? And here's what's absolutely true about transition. It will always reveal what or who you're trusting, okay? And that's one of the greatest gifts of transition, actually, is that it exposes our foundations, good, bad, or otherwise, okay? And sometimes we genuinely think and we credit to ourselves that we are trusting God, but we actually are not at all, okay? Sometimes we think genuinely, authentically, that we are trusting God until he removes the actual thing that we're trusting, or he shakes the actual thing that we're trusting, right? Perhaps it's your income. Perhaps it's your title. Perhaps it's your relationship or your relationship status. Perhaps it's your ministry. Perhaps it's your influence. Perhaps it's your approval, okay? Transition will 100% reveal every place where you have quietly built security outside of Christ. It will show you that. And that is a gift because nobody and no thing is qualified to be God. Anything that can be shaken will, okay? Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him and he shall direct thy paths. When you are trusting in things and in people outside of God, you are not trusting in the Lord with all your heart because you're dividing your heart. And then that is actually what's making you unstable in all of your ways. Because when a divided heart is in control, then you have a double mind, a divided mind. And then if all of that is divided inside of you, that's all you're going to create outside of you is division. You're not going to move in the purity that God has for you. Okay, so notice the contrast here. Trust or understanding, right? Most of us would prefer understanding. If we just knew what our next step was, if we just knew the plan, if God just showed us the whole blueprint, then we would be amped. We would be chill. We would life would be Gucci for us, right? But we want the 5-year plan, right? Like we want the detailed roadmap with all the stops on it. Like we want the timeline. We want the guarantee. We want that, right? But faith does not require full understanding. Okay, faith requires trust. And if you understand everything that God is doing, you wouldn't need faith and you definitely wouldn't depend on God. So an example of this, when I was really building the ecosystem that is Courage Co., it didn't make sense to me because it went against all of the ways that I've built in the past. It went against capacity that I thought that I had that God wanted to keep increasing. It went against even like my ways of caring for myself. Like I had to figure out and really discern when to push and when to rest and like how to rest in action, which was really new. It just was really, really hard. And I did not genuinely understand why it had to be that hard. Why it had to be that heavy, why it had to feel so lonely, why it felt mostly unsupported, why I was dealing with so much warfare and so much weight and so much attack, why I was being put under so much pressure, why I was being faced with so many challenges that I genuinely did not invite, why so many things were being questioned, why things were being stolen, why things were being just attacked, really, like why is this happening? I just kind of got caught up in that because it was exhausting and it was hard and it was relentless, and my command was still keep going, keep building, don't slow down, don't relent, just like keep going. And I'm like, but why? And eventually it became to this point where God was like, you don't need to understand why I'm telling you to do this to obey me. You don't have to like it. It doesn't have to feel good, and you can still obey me. Will you just simply obey me? And I thought, well, duh. But then I just accepted it. I'm like, you're right. Like, I don't have to like it. It doesn't have to feel good, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do everything as unto the Lord, and I'm going to show up with passion and on purpose. And I don't have to know why. And if you want me to know something, then you'll tell me. But I'm going to continue to seek you, and I'm going to continue to obey you. And it's okay if I'm uncomfortable, because this is where you want me. And that's what you've just validated, right? So when we make emotions our God, when we make our understanding our God, we get in big trouble. And a lot of things never get built and established because we put our emotions on the throne. We exalt our emotions. We exalt our understanding. And that's not what God is saying for us to do. So we actually don't build the things that he's telling us to build. And then when we don't build and establish those things, then we're actually not ready for the things that he wants to lead us into. And we're out of the timing of the Lord. We're out of alignment. So now when he does want to bless us, we didn't do the work. And we're not in position for the blessing, because we didn't obey what he was telling us to do and the timing he was asking us to do it. And that's a really big deal, okay? So we have to recognize that fear will always guard the new territory. And you do not want to move in fear, and you do not want to be intimidated by fear or partner with it. But you don't want to be surprised by it either. Of course it's going to be there, right? So in the example that we had with Joshua, we were in Joshua 1 through 9, okay? God tells Joshua, be strong and courageous. And this is why Courage Co. is literally built on this, because anything that God's going to ask you to do starts with courage. And then you're going to move into trust, like the courage of the willingness to trust and to go where God says go. And then the willingness to be stretched and to develop your faith, right? And to get uncomfortable, to heal, to face things that you don't want to face, to confront what needs to be confronted, to release what needs to be released, to develop what needs to be developed. Like all of that is going to take courage. And it's all going to be something that you haven't done before. Also going to take courage, okay? And you're going to have to look at some things that you don't like and that are really painful. It's going to take courage, okay? But in Joshua, he tells Joshua this 3 times. Why does he do that? Be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. Why? Because courage isn't necessarily when everything is familiar and comfortable. And you don't need courage to stay where you've always been. You already know what that looks like. You already know what that feels like. You already know what that requires, and it requires nothing new of you. That's how you know it's a dead thing. It requires nothing new of you, right? You actually need courage to enter places where you've never walked before, right? Fear almost always stands at the doorway of increase. Think about it. Every promotion introduces new responsibility. Every new relationship requires vulnerability. Every act of obedience will stretch your comfort zone, right? So fear will say, stay where it's safe, right? Faith says, follow where God leads. The enemy loves convincing people that familiarity is safer than obedience. Somebody hear this for the love. The enemy loves convincing people that familiarity is safer than obedience. But familiarity has never been the goal. Faithfulness is. Faithfulness is. And God will absolutely test who or what you are faithful to. Because it's so easy to say you're faithful to God until it's tested. You actually don't know what you actually decree and declare until it is tested. Faith has to be tested to be proven. So Peter is somebody who gives us another picture. In Matthew 14:28, here's what it says. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me to come unto the water, right? So we had the picture in the last part of this teaching, right? Of leaving the shoreline, okay? So now we're out on the water. We don't know the destination. And now Jesus is like, come out onto the water. And you're like, huh? Okay. And he said, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But, big old but when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him. So Peter obeyed in the very beginning, right? He walked on water because Jesus validated, come, okay? But only while his attention remained on Jesus could he stay solid and steady, and that's absolutely true. Only when your attention is fixed, not double-minded, but single-minded, can you stay steady and can you keep walking. That's why I will always say a day at a time, a step at a time, in a moment at a time, right? So transition will always bring wind. It will always bring like the wild, the uncomfortable to your life. Questions, opinions, resistance, uncertainty, challenges, financial strain, right? Like if you stare at all of that, the storm, long enough, you'll eventually forget who called you out. You'll lose it. You'll miss your focus. And the goal isn't pretending that the storm doesn't exist. The goal is remembering who is greater than the storm and who is still carrying you through it and who actually is on the other side of it. Right? Because God doesn't lead you where he doesn't already know victory is guaranteed. Okay? So in this time of transition, you have to be very careful not to confuse conviction with condemnation. Those are not equal. Those are not synonymous, okay? And one of the enemy's favorite tactics in this time is accusation. He's the accuser of the brethren. So that's one of the ways that you know that it's the enemy, not the Lord, is the accusations. He whispers, you missed God. You'll never recover. You're going to lose it all. You're too late. You ruined everything. But you got to listen to Romans here. Here's what Romans says. Romans 8:1. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus. Okay? Conviction will always draw you closer to the Lord. Condemnation will push you away. And the enemy wants to draw you away because then he'll have more authority over you. Or he'll try to convince you that that's so when you actually have authority over him. Okay? So if your thoughts are causing you to hide or to run from God, you have to question who is seeding those. They're not coming from God. Okay, the Father is always going to invite you into something. The enemy will always accuse you and draw you out of the very things God is drawing you into. And you have to discern the difference. And it can often be subtle. That's why we cannot move in our understanding and we cannot move in our emotions. Okay, and here's what you have to know about transition. It is about your capacity. Okay, this is where I believe the Lord has been speaking to me over the past several years, okay? We often pray, Lord, increase me. Lord, expand my influence. Lord, bless my ministry. Lord, open bigger doors, right? And God responds, first, let me expand your capacity. And we're like, huh? It's like he literally gives us a foreign language or something. But what if the greatest miracle isn't even about the opportunity that he presents to you? What if it's becoming the kind of person who can faithfully steward the opportunity? Like that, you actually cannot even fathom. And that is what your heart actually desires. Okay? Because God isn't merely interested in just getting you somewhere. He's interested in making sure that you can remain there when you get there. Right? Because we spend our whole life just trying to get to the land or get to the territory, but we actually then are not prepared to stay there, because that's a different strategy entirely. And not just to stay there, but to occupy that and then move into more territory, right? Like we're not just working to get to one place and that's it, but that's what many people are doing, and they're not even getting to that place. Because before they even get to that place, they go back to where they were. They look back, which we learned we are not going to do. Okay, like Lot's wife, we're going to become a pillar of salt if we look back. We're not doing that. So God is interested in making sure that you remain where he gets you to, okay? And promotion without maturity creates pressure. Promotion with maturity creates stewardship. So every season of transition is expanding your capacity to carry exactly what you've been praying for. So you don't want to despise the process. You want to see that as God's faithfulness. God is developing you, and that's God's investment into you. And that means he's fully expecting a harvest. He is fully expecting a return. So you don't have to get caught up in the timeline and the how. God will handle both of those. You are not going to rush the formation. You are going to set yourself to embrace it. It takes what it takes. It costs what it costs. That's none of my business, right? God is preparing you for something that requires a larger vessel than you have been and than you are currently today. So I want to encourage you with part 2 to think about these things that we covered and to go back to these scriptures, okay? So signs of transition are the grace lifting, okay? The grace will begin to lift, so pay attention to that. And striving starting to take over, okay? And then also our trust starting to waver. You want to pay attention to those areas. You can look at Proverbs 3:5, John 15:4. These are great scriptures to go back and read and study, okay? Now you also have to recognize that fear is absolutely going to be guarding the gates of the new territory. So you have to be prepared to face what you fear. That's why you're going to need courage. So I want to encourage you to look at whatever fear is in front of, that's likely what you need to run into, not away from. Okay? And then also picture Peter. Have you truly in this season been focusing on the Lord, or have you been letting condemnation take over? Have you been letting some distractions take over? Have you started losing your passion and your focus? I've defined courage as keeping the same level of passion that you had in the beginning of a thing all the way through a thing. Because we usually lose our passion when we start facing some challenges. So can you still bring the same level of passion that you had in the beginning? Can you go back to the prophetic words? Can you go back to what God spoke